So here we have section 3.1, exercise 16. And in exercise 16, we would just like to find the critical numbers of the function on the interval. So we have f of theta equals 2 secant theta plus tangent theta. And we're told our interval is from 0 to 2 pi, but it is the open interval. So 0 is less than theta is less than 2 pi. So if we have critical numbers at 0 or 2 pi, they don't count because they're not in our interval. All right, so finding critical numbers. Oh, well, I need the derivative. Okay, derivative of secant. Now that's secant tangent. So we can always look that up. So we have secant tangent, and then plus the derivative of the tangent, that's secant squared theta. And so we have that, and well, we'd like to know where that's undefined and where it is 0. So let's look at where it's 0. Let's set this thing equal to 0. And we have a secant in both of these. So we have a secant theta times 2 tangent theta plus secant theta is equal to 0. Okay, so, well, secant theta, where is that equal to 0? Well, that's 1 over the cosine. And so the problem is you have 1 over. Well, so this is never 0, right? Because 1 divided by something is never 0. So it's 1 divided by the cosine, and so we will never get 0 on that. Okay, over here on this next one we have 2 tangent theta. So I could come back here and say, well, 1 over the cosine theta, right? That is never equal to 0 because I can't get a 0 in the numerator. Okay, so 2 tangent theta, let's see, plus secant theta is equal to 0. Well, that looks hard for me. I change everything to sines and cosines. So I have 2 sine theta over cosine theta plus 1 over cosine theta equals 0. Well, see, this makes it a little bit easier for me in that, once again, you know, if cosine of theta is 0, well, this whole thing's undefined anyway. And so let's just multiply through by cosine theta when it's not 0. And we get 2 sine theta plus 1 is equal to 0. So sine theta is equal to negative 1/2. Okay, so in terms of reference angles, that is the angle theta. You know, if we say, well, theta is the arc sine of negative 1/2, well, that's actually one I know. You know, that's a 30-degree or pi over 6 angle. But now this is negative, so we have to think about when does that happen between 0 and 2 pi. Okay, so if I think of my reference angles in the unit circle and so forth, right? So sine is my y value here over the radius of the circle. And so where is that going to be negative? Well, it's going to be negative down here. So in this quadrant, I would get a sine that's negative 1/2. And in this quadrant, I would get a sine that's negative 1/2. So what are those angles? Well, again, the reference angle is pi over 6 or 30 degrees. But between 0 and 2 pi, I'd be coming around this way. So I get one of those thetas. Theta could be pi plus pi over 6. That would be that first angle. And then to get around here, well, it's going all the way around as 2 pi, so theta could be 2 pi minus pi over 6. And those are my two numbers. Now I could write these a little better, right? So that would be 7 pi over 6. And here I have 12 minus 1, so that's 11 pi over 6. So there are two of my critical numbers. That's where the derivative is 0. Now where is the derivative undefined? Well, the secant can be undefined and the tangent can be undefined. But actually, because tangent is sine over cosine, they're actually undefined in the same places. So we just need to know where the cosine of theta is 0. Well, cosine of theta is 0. Again, so cosine is your x over that radius. And so when is x 0? Well, when my triangle collapses into this thing, that's pi over 2 or 90 degrees. And also down here when it's 3 pi over 2 or 270 degrees. And so the secant is undefined at those places as well as the tangent. And so my other critical numbers are theta equal pi over 2 and theta equal 3 pi over 2. So I believe that's it, though, between 0 and 2 pi. So trig functions, they can get a little messy because we've got all these things going on. Now, if you have a little trouble with the trig on that and so forth, well, we could go here, not sage cell at this point, Desmos, and on Desmos, I could plot that derivative, and that derivative, so now I could just do each of the pieces separately, so I could go in here and do secant, and it says theta, but I would use x, so secant of x. And here, then you can see where it appears to be undefined, all right? And we need to be between 0 and 2 pi, which is a little more than 6 right there. And so I see that, it appears to be undefined, right in there and somewhere right in here. And I could, kind of blow this up to try to figure out where that is. And, oops. So, I'm bigger than 1, less than 2, and so I could try checking. It looks like maybe it's pi over 2, because pi over 2 would be 1.5 ish, and so I could simply check that by coming in here and saying function secant. Oops, I didn't make a new spot, so let's get rid of that. Here we go. Now I'm in a new spot. So I could say secant and pi divided by 2. Undefined. Perfect. All right. So that was one place it was undefined, and I could also check down here. What do we have? 2 tangent. So functions tangent, and again, use x when you're plotting stuff on Desmos. 2 tangent x. Oh, it got dark in here because I guess I'm not moving around enough. Plus secant. So I need my function again here, secant x. And there we have that. And we can look at where that is equal to 0. And between 0 and 2 pi, and we found this spot. And look at that. Desmos is amazing sometimes, the way it did the 7 pi over 6. And we can come here and check that one. And 11 pi over 6. And so we could get it that way. So we, I think, doing some algebraic and trig manipulations, that is a good thing. And definitely if you're planning on being a math major, you should work on those skills. But on the other hand, if you truly understand what's going on, you don't necessarily have to have amazing algebra and trig manipulation skills to, take a look at graphs and get some results that way. Okay, so there we have it again. We had this portion was 0 at 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. It was undefined in here somewhere. Okay, and that, well, notice it appears, let's see if I make this a little smaller, right? It appeared, whoops, gotta watch that pen. It appears that it is right there at the same spot that the secant is undefined. So secant was undefined at pi over 2, and it is also undefined at 3 pi over 2. And we could always check that. We could go in here. I could arrow over a little bit and say 3 pi over 2, and notice it is still undefined. So that is our other spot, is 3 pi over 2. Okay, so I think that took care of, was that number 16? Let's go back. Yes, number 16. And so we got these for our critical numbers.